We're going to open a little bit. There we go. Our opening song, we raised by Ebenezer. And Ebenezer is something you raise up to remind yourself and future generations of how great our God is, to remind us of His leading and His power to guide us in the way and in the truth and the life. I want to share with you my story today on how God has prepared me for the ministry. My journey of being into the ministry is far different than any people that I know. Most people go to college and learn their way, like my brother Eddie over here, who I have a privilege of working with. And God had a different route for me. He had a different way of teaching me and preparing me to be His minister, a pastor, if you will, of the church. And I was amazed at His leading and His power to do so, and I believe you will be too. And remember, all glory goes to God, none to me, as I tell you this story. I was a journeyman mechanic that got tired of the cars because they weren't like 57 Chevys anymore. They had computers, and they were getting all computerized, and I did not like that. That wasn't the same anymore. And so my love and my passion for working on cars had just kind of washed away. And so I looked for a different occupation. And not having a college education, you're very limited in what you can do. And I always loved to travel, so I became a truck driver. Drove a semi, an 18-wheeler across this country, and my wife wanted to be with me, and I wanted her with me, so I trained her, got her CDL, and she rode with me. And we had two wonderful kids. They were still very young, I think 3 and 4 when we started, and we all were living in that truck, traveling across the country. And it was fun. We had a good time. We made sure it was fun for our kids. We stopped at a lot of places like Mount Rushmore and different places for them to see, like Custer's Last Stand, and we had a lot of fun. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, your kids grow up. They start getting bigger, and the truck starts getting more crowded, and it was time to get off the truck. And so I let my wife and my kids off, and we began to pray, Lord, what will you have me to do? I don't want to be a mechanic. I don't really care for cars the way that they are now. And so, I don't know what to do. What would you have me to do? And we were pleading with God, and God is an amazing God, because when you're praying, and I thank you for the prayer, special music today, because when we're praying, God is amazing. He answers prayers in ways you have no idea. And you're thinking, what? How could this be the answer to prayer? And so we're praying for God to open doors for me to get off that truck, because I think it's important that you're with your family, you're with your kids, that you're with them as they grow. Well, in our church that we had, we were blessed in our church that kids were very involved in church. Do you like that? Isn't that wonderful? I love kids being up front. I love to see children up front, and our church was like that. And so they had a play that weekend, and I was fortunate enough to be home for that weekend. And so I went to their play, and as I walked into the door, there in the foyer was a man by the name of Dr. Will. Now, I knew about Dr. Will more than I knew him. His wife, Carlene, was a good friend to my wife, and so he knew about me probably more than I knew about him. And I walked in, and I saw him there, and he was talking with somebody, and he turned, he says, "You're just the guy I need." And I thought, well, he needs a refrigerator moved or something. So I thought, okay, yeah, what do you need? What do you want there, Dr. Will? He says, well, I think you know that I'm building a laser suite, my practice there, and I'm going to be needing a laser engineer to take and run my laser, and I'm going to have a mobile laser system where I'm going to go to all these different places because I won't have enough people at my practice immediately, so my $1 million laser needs to move around a lot. And so I need a laser engineer. So I'm still trying to figure out where I fit into this story. And I'm going, okay, you need me to build a truck for you or something? Or, I don't know. And he says, and you're just the guy I need. I go, well, wait a minute. I don't know anything about lasers, and I don't know anything about the eyes. Oh, don't worry about that. He says, I'll train you everything you need to know about the eyes, and I'll send you off to laser school, and you'll be fine. I'm like, what? Well, it's time for the program to start, so our conversation ended right there. And it was a wonderful program, and when it was done, I went home, and to me, I thought it was kind of funny that he would even introduce the idea that I would be his laser engineer. I was like, yeah, that's pretty funny. And I just thought it was a joke. I thought he was being nice, just being courteous to me. And so I thought I would share with my wife this joke. If you know my wife, her sense of humor is a lot less than mine. And so I told her, I says, hey, it's really funny. I says, Dr. Will offered me a job as a laser engineer. And she sits bolt right up in bed and says, what did you tell him? What did you tell him? And I go, well, calm down. It was probably not true. He was being friendly. But did you say anything? What did you say? What did you say? I go, I didn't say anything. We went on. He goes, are you going to call him? You're going to call him? You're going to talk to him? Well, okay, well, settle down already. Yeah, I'll call him in the morning. He's probably asleep now. Okay. And I don't think she slept a wink. I did, of course. But in the morning, I called him. I says, were you serious? Were you serious about what you were asking? He goes, absolutely, I'm serious. You want to come over and I'll show you and talk to you about my dream and my plan? I go, well, okay. And I'm getting really nervous now. I'm thinking, Lord, how could this be the answer to our prayer? I'm not qualified for this. You need a lot of education for this. And I don't have it. And so I went to his house, and he's explaining to me what he wants to do. He says, I'm going to teach you about the eyes. He says, and I'm going to send you to laser school. And when you come back from laser school, I'm going to send you to Canada. And there you're going to observe doctors doing LASIK surgery so that you're ready to take this program as it takes off to really run with it. I'm like, okay. And so he says, now I'll start with your training. While you're driving truck, you can begin to study and learn about the eyes. And he takes and he pulls his big books. His medical books are huge. Pulls these things down. He says, thanks for a minute. It turns to a page and puts a little marker in there. He says, now you read this chapter here, and this will tell you everything you need to know in this book. And he sets it down, and I'm looking at the book, thick book, one chapter, what? And he's pulling down another one, does the same thing. I said, wait a minute. I said, this is a thick book. What do you mean read one chapter and I'll know everything? Because, doctors, they're long-winded. They just go, ying, 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 ying. He says, the important stuff in this book is right here. Wow. And he knows that? I was shocked. I was like amazed at his knowledge and remembering, knowing right where to go. I thought, wow, what a brilliant mind. And he wants me to work with him? Wow. And so I leave there with this pile of books to go and study and to read. And it's hard reading those books when you have little education. And I'm thankful for a wife who was medical staff coordinator who knew how to pronounce those long words. And she says, they're just pieces of words put together, so just learn how to put the little pieces around, and let me show you, because the words are really tough. Like, did you know that LASIK was just an abbreviation for quite a long word? The word for LASIK is actually this, laser-assisted in situ keratomylosis. And I had to read a lot of words like that. I'm like, what? How do you learn anything when you can't even say the words? It's like, okay. But my wife, praise the Lord, he put everything in place just as it needed to be, and she helped me learn how to read those words so I could study and be able to grasp those things. And so the time now for being a laser engineer had come, and Dr. Will had rented a condo for my family to go down there. So I was there with my wife and my kids so they could be there swimming in the pool and having fun while I was in school. And what he didn't tell me was really important that he didn't tell me. Because they told Dr. Will when he looked at my resume was not very exciting. 2.0 GPA is pretty high, isn't it? Not, okay. Well, that was my GPA because I was more interested in school, sports, and cars. Maybe not in that order, but the reality is I didn't try in school very hard, but I just had fun in school. And so now it showed up on my resume that I didn't do well. And they looked at Dr. Will and says, he has to have a 4-year college degree to take this course. He could never understand this stuff. And now Dr. Will's probably sweating and getting nervous, and he's going, well, he's my guy. You teach him. He says, well, no, we can't. He can't do it. Well, then I'm not buying the laser from you. Well, that's $1 million. You've heard of money talks? This is money talking right now. I'm not buying your laser. Well, okay then, you can send him, but he's not passing this school. You're wasting your money sending him here. He did not tell me that because I would have turned to him and says, well, they're right, Dr. Will. You're stupid for doing this. And so I, not knowing that, went there praying and pleading with God for wisdom. I'm so thankful that I was a student of God's Word because He'd bring things to my mind like James chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. He says, if any of you lack wisdom, he says, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally and doesn't hold back even a little bit. And I was in desperate need of wisdom right then. Did you agree? Oh, I needed, because I knew about windows that you look through. I had no idea this was a Windows computer. I didn't know anything about computers. I hated computers, and now I was going to have to learn how to replace the motherboard, the daughter board, and all the stuff that goes with it. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And then I had to learn the laser. This was nuts. And while everybody was out golfing at the end of the day, I was learning about the stuff that they already knew. Well, there's another unique part of laser engineering school, which I did not know, is that when they test you after teaching you for a little bit, if you do not pass the test, you're done. Did you know that? It's not like, oh, go home and study or go back and study and retake it. No, you're done. You're out of there. You're gone. Finished. Well, the Lord all along the way was helping me pass all these tests. And I was amazed that I was progressing through this class. The end result was beyond amazing. They have 4 tests you take at the end. You have your written test. You have your verbal test where they have all the engineers standing around asking you questions in which you have to answer these things verbally now. And then they have plastics that you have to learn how to read to know if the laser's operating properly and to say what's wrong with the laser if it has a defect in the plastics. You have to know how to read those plastics and dissect a problem if it's there. The 4th test is they break the laser. They shut it down in places, and you have to figure it out, and that laser has to be operating before you're done to pass that test. And so I went through all 4 of these tests, and the next day when they call you forward to let you know who passed or not, they were shocked, and I was more than shocked, and so was Dr. Will when they said that Joe Beazley is the only engineer to ever ace every test that's ever been given here. Wow. And now they were saying to Dr. Will, where'd you find this guy? Wow, he's perfect. This is great. How did that happen? And I'm still kind of like waving around like, what? How did that happen? God is so awesome. He made me look so good. He made me look awesome, and I was not deserving of that. Well, when I came back after passing that test so amazingly, and Dr. Will being suddenly the sweat's dried up, and he's happy now that he hired me. We had the opening deal for having the doctors come. So we had all these doctors from all over the place coming there to be trained how to do LASIK and how the laser works. And we had a guy that we hired to come in who trains people all over the world who was going to lead out in this. Before the thing happened, before the program happened, I sat down and we talked a bit about where I was and what I had accomplished already, which is nothing except passing the school. And I hadn't done any surgeries yet, haven't done anything. And he's now leading this class. And Dr. Will's office and surgery suite's pretty unique. It's a glass wall for the surgery suite where you can watch the laser surgery being done. It is pretty cool, really cool office. Well, this training exercise was about to begin in the laser room, and this guy goes, "We are really blessed today to have our very own engineer here who's going to teach you how to do the surgery in there." I hadn't done one. I just graduated from laser school. I hadn't done any surgeries yet. I'm like, gulp? What made him think that? And Dr. Will and Carlene are going like, "Oh no, this is not supposed to happen. No." And I'm just praying, "Okay, Lord, you got to teach me as we go." And so we go in there in groups of 4 from all the doctors. We had 3 different groups to go in there. And I go in there, and this teacher goes in there and listens to me for the first round. And I'm teaching all these doctors how to operate the laser and how to do laser surgery. And I can see Dr. Will and Carlene, they're in conversation out there, and they're kind of looking nervously at the laser room. What's going to happen in there? There goes the business now already. And I'm just talking to the Lord, "Help me teach what I don't know." And so I taught all these groups all the way through there. And we were all done, and all the doctors were gone. And I'm standing there with Dr. Will and Carlene. And he turns to them and me, he says, "You know, you two are very blessed to have the smartest engineer that I have ever had the privilege of being around." How could that be? I'm brand new, fresh out of school. How could that be? I was shocked and amazed at how powerful our God is. How He makes you look good. He prospers you when you lean on Him. And so we had our first mobile laser outing, and we got everything ready, and the places, they're all supposed to be ready for me, and they were not. I went all the way up there to put the laser in, and the laser wouldn't fit into the room. And so I had to tear it all the way down to its bare bones and take it in there piece by piece. And then reassemble the laser so it's ready for surgery in the morning. By the time I was done, it was time for the patients to start coming in. I had been up all night getting the laser ready. The doctor comes in, and he flaps the things to program all the patients down there. He says, "Okay, here they are, ready to program." And I open it up, and they were not ready to program. He had not done the nomogram. You guys all know what a nomogram is, don't you? Yeah, probably not. So a nomogram is how you take and you convert this number for your glasses into a programmable number into the laser, taking account for the humidity, for the altitude, and for the technique of the doctor, whether he likes a wet Maricel, which goes across your eye, a little sponge, or a drier Maricel. That nomogram needs to be filled out before I can program. I went to the doctor. I says, "You didn't do the nomogram." He says, "Yeah, I didn't really know how to do that. I was expecting you'd be able to know how to do that." Well, okay then. I had watched Dr. Will over his shoulder one time to do one eye. I watched him do the calculations. One time. And now I was supposed to do this nomogram? I went in there and says, "Okay, Lord, help me put this nomogram together." And so there I did. I did all the calculations all together. All the patients, by the way, came out perfect by God's grace. I went back and told Dr. Will what happened. He says, "What? What do you mean he wasn't ready? How did you do that?" "Well, I watched you over your shoulder do one." He goes, "Are you kidding me right now?" You see how great our God is? Again, His wisdom, His ability to give to you what you need when you need it. We were doing a major upgrade on our laser. We were moving it to an S2 laser, and that required me to tear the laser all the way apart. You're changing motherboards, daughter boards, optics, all the stuff, and it was being a brand new laser. So you're literally ankle deep in nuts and bolts. That thing is apart all in your laser room in a way, hopefully you can remember to put it back in the right sequence. And so I put this laser all back together, had it all done, and I'm taking and doing the first cutting of plastics, letting it ablate the plastic right there, and it stops in mid-ablation. That's not good news if it's on your eye. I wish Dr. Arlo was here. She would be like, what? So I'm going like, what's wrong? What did I do wrong? And so he says, Lord, you know, I did the best I could here. I'm trusting you. I need to know, how to fix this problem. We can't do surgery tomorrow if this is not working right. And so I just got into the computer part and started going through the program. And the Lord led me right to a spot that I needed to be. Just tripped this little switch, boop, and it fixed the problem. Like, wow. Now, the problem with that is a temporary fix that you have to, every day you start your laser, you have to go back into that program, and each day you have to trip that little switch because it doesn't permanently change it. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. So every day I'm tripping that switch, and pretty soon, just a habit. Just every day I get fired it up, get it ready, trip that switch, and our laser's working perfectly. 4 months later, I get a call from the president of Biddings. He says, hey, can I come up to see you? I said, sure, come on up. And so he comes up and he's hanging out in my office. He says, let's go into your laser room. I says, okay. We go in there. We're talking. And he says, hey, let's fire up your laser. I says, okay. We fired up. He says, hey, by the way, now we're getting to the point. Have you ever had the laser ever shut off in mid-surgery on you? I go, oh, man, that would be a disaster. No way would we ever allow that to happen. So that's never happened on yours since you did the upgrade? I go, no, it's And then I remembered the plastic. I go, oh, when I first did it, I was cutting plastic, and it did cut off halfway in between, but then I took care of it in the program. He says, oh, quick, where is that? How do you get to that part of the program? I go, well, hang on, I'll show you. And he gets his little phone, his little flip phones, and he calls up all of his men there. All the laser engineer people are gathered around on speakerphone. He says, okay, show me what you're doing. I'll tell them what's going on. I'm like, man, what's going on here? So I show him, go through, and he's telling him everything that I'm doing. I shut this little switch here, and I like that, done. And he's telling everybody that. It's like, yeah, that's what we do. That's where we go. And he closes the phone, and he looks at me. He says, how in the world did you find that? We have been struggling for 4 months to fix this problem, and we didn't even know where to start. How did you do that? And I look at him, I says, well, every day when I come in here to work on this laser, I say, Lord, this is your laser. You fix it. And he's looking at me like, what? I says, yeah. I says, I just ask God for the wisdom to do it, and he guides me every step of the way. And that's how I found it. Wow. Okay, from now on, when our laser engineers graduate from our little college down there, they need to come and spend a month with you before they're done. Amazing. I became what they call that famous laser engineer, all by God's grace. Amazing God that we serve. Now, the most powerful stories are yet to be heard. I can't tell you all of them, but I have to tell you this one. We were looking at a new laser because they were advancing all the time, and this new laser was just amazing. It tracks the eye. As the eye moves, the laser follows it all over. That is really cool. We did the first nystagmus patient in the country. A nystagmus, has you ever seen anybody's eyes that move all the time? That's nystagmus, okay? And so we were able to do the first one in the country, but that's another story. And so here I am, we're looking at this laser, and Dr. says, man, I want one. I want 2 of these, because now we have 2 offices now. I'm no longer doing mobile laser. I'm just working with him, and we're doing, a lot of eyes every month. And so he says, let's look into this. And so we went and looked into that, and we just loved it, what we saw. And he told him, he says, I want to buy 2 of these lasers right here. Oh, great. There's a couple of $1,000,000. And he says, but the deal is you have to train my engineer, pointing at me. You have to train him. Okay, well, give us his resume. Well, they got my resume, and they were really impressed, you think? No, they looked at me and says, no, there's no way he could pass this. We could not. This laser is way more complicated than the Biddings laser. Way more complicated. And they were right. It was way more complicated. And I was nervous. I was scared. Like, okay, let's just stay with the physics, please. But this is awesome. We needed it to advance. And he says, we have to have this guy trained. And they said, we've looked at his resume, and there's no way he could pass. No, there's no way we're doing that deal. He says, well, then I'm not buying your 2 lasers. Have you heard of money talking before? Here's money talking again. Now we're talking $2 million. And they go, well, okay, you can send him. It won't do any good. He can't pass. He says, that's my guy. He's going. And so you remember what I told you about testing, that you have to pass the test or you're done. Well, what they do for laser school is they have a guy that they pay a lot of money to go to all the different colleges to recruit the cream of the crop. They get the brightest of the brightest. They want the best for their business. And so here they have spent thousands of dollars to recruit all these guys. And so I'm in this class. It's about 10 other engineers that are in there with myself. And they start the class and they says, we're going to do something a little bit new today. Instead of teaching you today, we're just going to want to set the groundwork. And we're going to give you a test today. Well, what does that mean? If you don't pass, what happens? You're gone. And so I knew immediately why they were changing the program to give the test, because they wanted to disqualify me so they didn't have to waste any more time with me. And so I'm like, Lord, if you want me to be this engineer, it's your job to get me past this test. So all the guys in there are grumbling. Whoa, man, I can't. Why are you throwing this test? Come on, you haven't even taught. No, this is simple for you guys. It's okay. It's just simple stuff. You know, all you have to do is know your trigonometry and stuff. Like, whoops, I don't even know how to spell that. Okay. And so here I am, the test in front of me, and I do the test. I'm praying and say, Lord, give me the answers. And so I go through and I take this test. I'm the first one done. It's usually not a good sign. And I turn the test in and I go to my hotel room. I show up the next day in the morning. Those who know me know I'm always early. I'm always the first one, except Tom always beats me here. So, you know, I like to get early everywhere I'm going. And there they were. Here's the president of the company, the vice president of the company, the lead engineer, and the engineer from the area who had been very vocal to me that you're too stupid to pass this test. And I agreed with him every time. I go, yeah, you're right. I know. It's going to take a miracle. And so he says, come back to my office. And so we're walking back to the office, and this guy who had been very vocal to me turns to me and says, I need to apologize to you. And I go, what for? He says, well, I didn't realize that you're as smart as you are. I'm like, whoa, I passed the test. I was like all excited. Yeah, woohoo. And so we go into the office, and have you ever been into a room where everybody's smiling, but there's tension in the room? But you can't identify it? Like, what's the tension pressure? What's going on here? Everybody's like happy, we're talking and everything. And I'm like, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. And pretty soon, the president clears his voice. Well, we called you in here today so that you might do us a favor. And I'm thinking, what kind of favor can I possibly do these guys? I says, well, what's your favor? He says, well, we want your permission to throw out the test. I says, well, why? It sounded like I passed. He says, yeah, well, you're the only one. Think about that for a moment. The dumbest guy in the room passes. All the money that they have spent on these other guys is thrown away. They have to go away, and the whole class is centered around the one dummy they were trying to get rid of. And they spent all their time and effort on me. And they are scared to death because they know that I know that they were trying to get rid of me. And they're thinking, man, I know what we would do. We would say, sorry. And I turned to them, I says, I've got no problem with that at all. I'm okay with that. And a collective sigh of relief, like, whoo, amazing, amazing. You see, they got to see what true forgiveness is like. They got to see what it's like to truly be a Christian where you don't hold grudges. I didn't hold it against them because they were right. I wasn't qualified, but I serve a God who enables and qualifies the unqualified. You know, our text today is about God enabling you and preparing you for ministry. And that's exactly what He was doing. My God was teaching me something very vital to be a pastor at this pulpit. And that is that I needed to trust Him for every word that I say, for everything that I do. He is in charge. I needed to know that my God would qualify me for this pulpit. I needed to know. And He was training me, and I didn't know it then. I was happy to be a laser engineer, happy for the spotlight He had put me in, and that I looked great. But all the greatness I always gave to Him. I always pointed to Jesus. Every opportunity I had, I pointed to Him and says, He is the one, not me. And in that training, God was preparing me to be a pastor, and I didn't know it. But as I look back, I can see how every aspect of that laser engineer journey was simply another step towards service for my God. I want you to think about your life. Everything that you're doing right now, whatever it is, God is training you to be in service for Him. Everything, whatever, no matter how demeaning or small it may be, every part is to be in service for Him. And what that is, you don't know. Just like I didn't know. I was shocked at what He had in store for me. And you will be shocked at what He's got in store for you as well when you are giving Him the glory and looking for Him in everything that you do. Ask God. Say, Lord, help me to excel in what I do. See, the Lord says, I want you to be the head and not the tail. Do you see what He did with me, the laser work? He made me the head and not the tail, and I didn't deserve any of it. Neither do I deserve to stand up here before you. I cannot earn any of it. I cannot claim any glory for any possibility that I could be serving as a pastor. For it's all God's doing. It's all His. And I was reminded in 2 Kings 2:9, if you'll turn there with me. 2 Kings 2:9. This is a remarkable experience that Elisha got to go through. And we're just going to look at this part of the story. Go home and read the rest of it. It's a great story. It says, and it came to pass when they were gone over, which is over the river there, that Elijah said unto Elisha, ask what you shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee. And Elisha says, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. And when I read that, I realized what he was asking. Because he was recognizing, he says, how could I possibly fill Elijah's shoes? How could I fill his shoes without power from on high? Oh, I need Him to enable me. I need really something here. And Elijah says, well, if you see me taken up, then that's going to be granted to you. And as I looked at God leading me truly through mission field and onto this, I have truly seen Elijah being taken up. And I truly am blessed that He says, I will give you my Spirit. I will strengthen you for the task before you. And every day I praise Him and I thank Him for 1 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 12. Turn there with me. Our scripture for today. And I thank Christ Jesus our Lord, who hath enabled me, for that He counted me faithful, putting me into the ministry. I am so grateful to be a servant of God. You are all the servant of God here. No, I am no higher or no greater than any of you. God just purposed me to be here where I am. And He wanted me to share with you today and to raise this Ebenezer, if you will, that will give you courage. Courage to step out in faith. Because God may be answering your prayer and you're thinking, no way, I'm not qualified for that. Oh, trust in God, not in yourself. Don't trust in your ability. Trust in His promises. For truly, He will enable you to do whatever He leads you to do.
I invite you to join us in our closing song. I love to tell the story. Please stand.